लीला प्रविष्टम विष्णुपादस्तोत्रस्तुति श्रीमद् अभय चरणारविंद
यशोदनंदना व्रजजानरंजना
स्वामित भक्त वृंद की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद
यशोदनंदना व्रजजानरंजना
ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया
यमुनातीरावनचारी
श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं
यमुनातीरावनचारी
सदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी
श्रीरूपां शक्रजातं सहगणं रघुनाथा
गोपीजानवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
राधा कृष्ण पादान
यशोदनंदना व्रजजानरंजना
नमायों विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय
यमुनातीरावनचारी
नामो याचार्यपदाय
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी
नमायों विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजाकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शिष्यशत शिष्यमाद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBT Samstapakacharya His Divine Grace AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, titled Punishment and Reward of Kali, Text 22. Rājovāca dharmam bravīṣi dharma-jña dharmosi vṛṣa-rūpa-dhṛk yad adharma sthānaṁ sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Rājovāca dharmam bravīṣi dharma-jña dharmosi vṛṣa-rūpa-dhṛk yad adharma-kṛtaḥ sthānam sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Rājovāca dharmam bravīṣi dharma-jña dharmosi vṛṣa-rūpa-dhṛk yad adharma-kṛtaḥ sthānam sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Rājovāca dharmam bravīṣi dharma-jña dharmosi vṛṣa-rūpa-dhṛk yad adharma-kṛtaḥ sthānam sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Uvāca dharmosi vṛṣa-rūpa-dhṛk yadharma-kṛtaḥ sthānam sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Rājovāca sthānam sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Rājovāca dharmam bravīṣi dharma-jña sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Vaishnavis. Uvāca bravīṣi dharma-jña vṛṣa-rūpa-dhṛk adharma-kṛtaḥ sthānam sūcakasyāpi tad bhavet. Rājā uvāca. The king said, dharmam, religion, bravīṣi, as you speak, dharma-jña, one who knows the codes of religion, dharmaḥ, the personality of religion, asi, you are, vṛṣa-rūpa-dhṛk, in the disguise of a bull, yat, whatever, adharma-kṛtaḥ, one who acts irreligiously, sthānam, place, sūcakasya, of the identifier, api, also, tat, that, bhavet, becomes. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. Purport. A devotee's conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being a benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. Therefore, he does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God sent, and thus it is his grace. In the case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God sent. But in the case of loss or reverses, one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotee as to put him in great difficulty. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into such great difficulty, being crucified by the ignorant, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. That is the way of accepting a thing, either favorable or unfavorable. Thus, for a devotee, the identifier is equally a sinner like the mischief monger. By God's grace, the devotee tolerates all reverses. Maharaj Parikshit observed this, and therefore he could understand that the bull was no other than the personality of religion himself. In other words, a devotee has no suffering at all, because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali. Although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities, the extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion, for no one could understand the finer intricacies of the codes of religion. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to text 22 of chapter 17 in the matter of punishment and reward of Kali, Canto 1. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobishtham Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam-rūpa-kadāmāhyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta-padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Caitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swaminiti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitaikripa Pradayine Gaurakatha Dhamadaya Nagragramatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Gopi Pranadana Dase Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam bhangum langayate girim yatkripatamaham bande Shri Gurudinitarinam yatkripatamaham bande Paramanandamadhavam Shri Caitanya Ishwaram Katanchana smrite yasmin dushkaram tsukaram bhavet vismrite viparitam syat Shri Caitanyam namamitam. What is brought out in this verse is a very deep philosophical truth. think about 16 years ago, when I met, more than 16 years ago, when I met His Grace Gopi Parandan Prabhu, he explained this concept very nicely to me. And at that point, it completely changed my life. So this was a life changer, this concept that is being explained here. And once we understand this concept and accept it, then we develop unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So for the members of the Krishna Consciousness movement, we must have, this is a very important subject matter. Quite often we recite the verse, Tatte nukampam susamikshamano bunjanivatma-kritam vipakam hridvagvapabhir vidadan namaste jivetayo muktipade sadhayabak. So that speaks about how one should accept all one goes through in life as the mercy of the Lord. However, this verse is a little bit more stronger. It speaks about identifying the perpetrator. In fact, it's the same theme, but it goes a little bit more in fine detail. It speaks about that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. Now, this looks, it kind of defies common sense. I mean, what exactly is being explained here? So we need to understand this carefully. But before I go on to that, there is a basic thing that we all need to understand, especially in Western theological circles, the Western theological thinkers, they have developed a special discipline for the subject, special discipline called theodicy. So theodicy deals with justifying the ways of God to man, because for them it's a very big problem. It's called the problem of evil. Why is there evil in this world? And Christian theological scholars, even till this day, they still have not arrived at something really convincing. The discussion goes on. So let me just explain it in a simple form. So Saint Augustine, he cast this into the form of a dilemma. What is the dilemma? Either God cannot or God will not eliminate evil from the world. Either God cannot or God will not eliminate evil from the world. If He cannot, then He is not all powerful. If God cannot eliminate evil from this world, then He is not all powerful. If He will not eliminate evil from the world, then He is not all good. So, why He cannot or why He will not? So, especially in Western theological circles, they don't have the concept of previous births and future births. So, they don't have the advantage that we have. So, to reconcile this, there have been various attempts which have been made. In 1981, there was a rabbi, Harold Kushner. So he had a son who had a disease called progeria, which means that they prematurely age. So his son was born in 1963 and he died the same year as Prabhupada. He died the same year as Prabhupada physically disappeared, which was 1977. So he lived only for 14 years. So in that 14-year time span, he went through the whole cycle. He became old, wrinkles, and became frail, and finally died in 14 years. So he had a very difficult time, this Kushner, to reconcile this. What did the child do? The innocent child. And this is the problem with a lot of theologians have. When they see the sufferings of children, they just cannot understand how this could be caused by God. So, or why is God quiet about it? So what Kushner did was, he wrote a book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. So in that book, he takes the approach that God wants to eliminate evil. God wants to eliminate evil, but He's not able to do it. So you don't have anymore a concept of God which is all powerful. But nevertheless, his idea was accepted because there's a lot of resentment among scholars and among practitioners of these different religious traditions, how to reconcile evil. So finally they found someone who was bold enough to present their dilemma and also present some solution to that. I mean, at least a so-called solution. The book is still quite popular, but nevertheless, it is still not resolved or settled, because it can never be resolved or settled without invoking the concept of past lives. So, in Krishna consciousness, we are taught very clearly, Prabhupada's final words while physically disappearing from this planet. You can see that 1977 in his room, they're holding a dictaphone very close to his mouth, and Prabhupada's voice are faint. The sentence itself takes a long time to complete, but he says it very clearly and very articulately. He says, everything, every moment in this universe is moving and acting by the supreme desire of Krishna. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So these are some of the final words that Srila Prabhupada spoke. So as devotees in this Krishna consciousness movement, how do we understand this properly? In the purport to the Tattenukampam verse, I think maybe I'll read the purport, so we'll get some idea. The commentators, Hridyananda Govaraj, Gopiparandan Prabhu and Dravida Prabhu have the following to say. They took it from the commentaries of the previous acharyas, and so they faithfully rendered the commentary of the previous acharyas. So here's what they have to say, the previous acharyas, and this is very nicely captured in English. Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has simply to remain alive to gain inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. Okay, the next paragraph. The word Susamikshamana indicates that a devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes appear to resemble sinful reactions. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord, and therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. Although a devotee is surrendered to the Lord's devotional service, until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. The unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. There's one more paragraph. It's a very short paragraph. Okay. A sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisance to the Lord with his heart, words and body. Such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God, as indicated here by the words dhaya-bhak. Just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire, one cannot approach the supreme pure Lord Krishna without undergoing a rigid purificatory process which may appear like suffering, but which is in fact a curative treatment administered by the personal hand of the Lord. Now, so there are two categories of people in this world, the non-devotees and the devotees. So whatever happens in the life of a non-devotee is awarded by Mahamaya, the material energy of the Lord. It is fully fair, it is fully just. They're just like the laws of gravity. Whether a small child goes and jumps off a building or an adult goes and jumps off a building, both of them are going to fall and break their bones or perhaps even die. So the laws of gravity do not distinguish between a small child and a grown-up person. So like that, the laws of karma does not distinguish between whether you are ignorant of it or whether you know about it. Whether you know about it or you don't know about it, if you commit a sinful activity, the punishment is there. Ignorance is not an excuse. So that's for the case of the non-devotees. So what happens in the case of the devotees? So in the case of the devotees, Prabhupada explains that when one takes to the surrendering process, the Lord takes immediate charge. He uses that specific expression, immediate charge. So the moment someone makes up his mind, her mind, his mind, whatever the case may be, that I want to attain love of Godhead and I want to fully follow the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Just do these two things. I want to attain love of Godhead and I want to fully accept the teachings of His Divine Grace and A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and follow them. From that very moment, one is considered surrendered. So, the Lord takes direct charge. So, when the Lord takes direct charge, He reconfigures, He redistributes the past karmic reactions. So, whatever He thinks, to whatever quantity He thinks, is relevant for a devotee to break sinful mentality, He provides it. The example of vaccination may be relevant here, although I am not advocating for vaccines or not, neither for nor against it. That's a different topic. But I'm just talking about the principle of a vaccine. The principle of a vaccine is intended to do good. Sometimes when children are given vaccine, they have fever for a day. Even adults do get, I guess. So, but nobody cares about it. That's an expected suffering. Let it go through some suffering for the larger good, because a certain medicine has been administered. So like that, when Krishna administers a particular situation, there may be a certain discomfort with that situation. So even if there is a certain discomfort with the situation, it is going to produce good. That is the understanding. And the difference is, okay, anyway something suffering. So Prabhupada used to often say that the Lord minimizes the suffering. It is not that He gives it in entirety. Of course, the Lord can do that also if He thinks it is relevant. But generally, the Lord minimizes the suffering also. And Prabhupada was once traveling in a car and he bumped his head and there was a cut. So when the disciples saw him when he reached the temple, so Prabhupada said, actually my head should have got cut off, but it's a small bump. So that's how a devotee looks at things, that the Lord has done it for His purposes to purify me. Although Prabhupada is an eternal associate of the Lord, So he said that so that we can learn to understand, so we can understand what is the right mood. So the Lord does that so that it produces good and we become pure and attain to His lotus feet. So that therefore it is not considered karma, because karma means that which is meant to cause you to suffer. That's called karma. That which is meant to cause you to purify, administered by the Lord. Of course, karma also you could say ultimately is meant for your purification, because the suffering also eventually is supposed to. But when it is specifically administered by the Lord in a certain, according to His estimation, according to His calculation, then it is not considered as karma. So devotees also go through this, but devotees, when they go through this, it is different from what the non-devotees are going through. Okay, that's one part of it. Maybe we'll be able to somehow come to terms with that. But what about this, which is mentioned in this verse, is one more level deeper. It is saying that if you are a victim, you should not identify your perpetrator. That's what it means here, essentially. So what does it mean? So this has to be understood properly and carefully. Let's take the example of Draupadi. Now Draupadi, she has gone through all kinds of suffering in her life. One after the other, one after the other. In fact, Prabhupada writes in the purport that Devaki had to suffer once, but the Pandavas, they had to suffer again and again and again and again and again. Practically their whole life they had to suffer. In fact, Kunti Devi in her prayer speaks about a great fire, she speaks about a poison cake, cannibals, vicious assembly of the Kurus, sufferings in exile, fierce battle, devastating weapon. Ashwatthama even tried to kill Parikshit Maharaj. So they went through tremendous amount of suffering. And then you had a situation where, amidst all this suffering, one kind of suffering that they had to go through was Ashwatthama killing the sleeping sons of Draupadi. So even when this Ashwatthama was brought before Draupadi, what does she say? She says, free him. And why does she say free him? She says that I don't want his mother to undergo the same kind of suffering that I have gone through. That is her foremost consideration. So she is not thinking, oh, this rascal, he killed my children. He deserves to be killed. I need to see him go through some pain. That's not her consideration. Her consideration is that his mother should not have to undergo the same suffering that I am going through. So this is the nature of pure devotional service. So when it says not to, that if you identify the perpetrator, it is as good as committing the sinful activity. What it means is the desire to identify a perpetrator for the sake of revenge, for the sake of seeing the perpetrator in pain, is the same mentality. That's what is being spoken of here. It's not that a perpetrator cannot be identified at all. In fact, Prabhupada established the Krishna conscious movement such that he said everything should be perfect in our movement. The behavior, the dealings between devotees and everything should be very nice, of the highest standard. So Prabhupada wanted to set that standard. So even here in this particular episode also we can see how Parikshit Maharaj, he's talking very strong words. Who has done this to you? Let me punish this person. So that is what is needed. But the mood of a devotee should be that if they have to identify a perpetrator, it is not because there should be some punishment that is awarded to the perpetrator. Rather, it should be because one should not have to find oneself in an unfavorable situation for Krishna consciousness, or this person should not be able to harm others. That's the consideration of pure devotional service. Not that, oh, I want to see this person go through some pain. That's not the standard of pure devotional service. And that is what is being spoken of in this verse. So when it speaks about identifying the perpetrator, the context has to be also understood. The context is that the devotee is not interested in punishing anyone. A devotee is interested in doing good for everyone, including himself actually. So if the perpetrator is going to repeat and you're going to get into a situation where your Krishna consciousness is going to get affected, obviously you have to stop it. And apart from that, if the perpetrator is going to harm other people, it's a problem for the society of devotees, and he's going to potentially harm other people, definitely it has to be addressed and brought up. So the point is that a devotee thinks, this is very important, a devotee thinks that he himself is 100% responsible, not 99%, not 99.99%, not 99.999%, not 99.9999%, not 99.99 repeated 99 times. 100%, we are responsible for everything that happens to us. We deserve every bit of it. 100%. This is the attitude of pure devotional service. So the moment we understand this, that is the beginning point of developing unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because it is a fact. This is a fact. This is what is being trying, this is what Prabhupada is trying to explain here also in this purport and throughout his books. No one except ourselves, we are responsible for the suffering. Generally in Krishna consciousness, we are supposed to not think that we are the center. Correct? But this is one place where we can comfortably think we are the center. We are the ones. So all the suffering that we are going through, everything that we are going through, we are 100% responsible for that. So then what happens is that immediately one becomes peaceful, because at least we know that this is what it is. Otherwise, what happens is that we try to control so many external circumstances which are uncontrollable anyway. And in the process, we get distracted from Krishna consciousness. We lose the precious treasure of Krishna consciousness. So quite often, this whole thing of thinking that I need to get revenge and all these different things comes because we invest too much power in other people. I remember my temple president, when I joined, he joined Krishna consciousness, he used to tell me, you cannot lose your happiness until you sell it. You cannot lose your happiness until you sell it. So whoever may be behaving wrongly with us, or whatever circumstances we may be going through, so unless we realize that this person cannot make me unhappy. I can be unhappy only if I choose to be unhappy. So there are different ways of looking at it. Everyone in this material world, in fact, Bhagavatam, the 3rd canto, speaks very strong words. Is generally everybody in this world is a dancing dog in the hands of Maya. Okay. So, okay, I'm just talking generally. So, this has got certain nuances, but at least I'm just talking the principle here. So, if someone who is behaving like a dancing dog in the hands of Maya causes some trouble to us, why should it matter? Anyway, he or she is behaving like a dancing dog in the hands of Maya. So, why should we give some importance to that? Why are we giving so much importance to that person? So that's one way of looking at it, because that's a philosophical truth, that people who behave in sinful ways are sinful and pious ways, which is not Krishna conscious, are all dancing dogs in the hands of Maya. So only when we invest certain importance, invest certain power in the hands of people, that's when we get hurt. We are getting hurt by the power we are investing in other people. That is turning back as a weapon against us. But if we look at things through Shastra, then we understand that anyway, anyone who is behaving irreligiously is simply a dancing dog in the hands of Maya. Why give that person so much importance? He's behaving like that. Of course, the question comes up, what if they are devotee? So, yes, they're devotees, but even among devotees, there are different categories. Like when it speaks about apichet suduracharo, okay? Prabhupada speaks about accidental fall down. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that such a person exhibits two characteristics. It's not apichet sudurachara can be just blindly and just randomly just applied. There are two conditions. It is conditional, just like when you have some offers by some companies, right? They put a fine dot. Conditions apply. So apichet sudurachara comes with a certain condition. The two conditions. Number one is that the person who has committed it, you will notice the person is extremely repentful of that. Extremely repentful, shameful. That's number one. The second condition is the devotee thinks, I am a shame on the society of devotees. I am living in an exalted society of devotees. My behavior has brought shame to the society of devotees. So what kind of a person I am? I'm unworthy, I'm unfit to be in the society of devotees. So the person becomes very humble. Such a person is what this apichet sudurachara verse is applied for. Applied to. It's not that somebody commits sinful activity, he doesn't bother about it. Apichet sudurachara verse applies. Or if he himself quotes, yeah, actually Krishna says, it's okay. If the devotee himself quotes it, something is seriously wrong there. This is not the application of apichet. So when such a person behaves like that, naturally, if the person has offended you, naturally, if you see the repentance of this person and the person's attitude, naturally you'll feel, let me forgive him. That's just natural. It just moves the heart to see how terribly the person is actually trying to make up for the mistake that they have done. The problem comes when they don't think about making up for the mistakes. When they don't think about making for the mistakes, obviously they're not apichet sudurachara category. So obviously they're behaving like dancing dogs in the hands of Maya. Very simple. So therefore that's something which they need to give up, and they need to recognize that first of all, then before they give it up. So Padmabad Prabhu is sitting right here, and I've got just one more minute, I guess, to reach 8:45. He sent me a message, stop your class at 8:45 for comments and questions. Okay. So just the final thing that I want to speak about this is that we cannot try to control the external situations. It's fully in the hands of Krishna. So the more we try to control the externals, the more we'll get entangled in it. At the same time, I'm not speaking that we should behave foolishly. As I already said, we should do whatever is within our limits, but we should not be obsessed about punishing. That's not in our hands. We can only try to stop harm from happening to us further, and harm from others getting into harm. But we should remember this principle that whatever has happened to us, 100% we are responsible for it. And the moment we have that attitude, then Krishna consciousness becomes very, your progress in Krishna consciousness becomes very smooth and steady and fast. So that's been my personal experience in life. So that's why I thought I could share this. That particular meeting with Gopi Parananda Prabhu. In fact, he looked at me and he said, he very compassionately said, I think that you should try to solve, because I was giving him a list of problems that is facing externally. And he told me specifically, I think the list of problems that you are trying to, you explained to me, these lists can be solved internally. He said, I don't think they can be solved externally. I thought, what? Then it really occurred to me. Then he said that it's a question of how we handle things internally. And which is a fact. The moment that happened, then, life completely changed. So much so that after some time, so many things keep happening in this world, So then you begin to think, oh yeah, when Krishna says, whether it's fame, infamy, it all becomes very easy. Whether you get some fame, whether you don't get some fame, these are all externals anyway. The real thing is internal. I need to progress in Krishna consciousness. What is happening to me is happening by, is fully caused by me. It's not caused by someone else, at least the sufferings. In fact, Prabhupada says both the sufferings and good things we should consider, not just us, but the hand of the Lord is there. It's not just us. But we can't blame it on somebody else. That's what it is. But the credit should always go to the Supreme Lord. Credit for the suffering also, because that suffering is meant to purify us. So I think I'll stop there. If there are any comments or questions. Mataji, he went first, so after that, I'll come to you after that. Thank you.
Very nice class, Prabhu. So many relevant points. One thing that I've found over the years, take responsibility that this is actually, I'm the cause. But then there's another transcendental angle that allows you to actually feel transcendental bliss. And that's that, like, you look at 1.9.17 and 1.19.19. This is the passing of Bhishma Dev. In the purport of 1.9.19, Prabhupada says the suffering a devotee undergoes, the tribulations, he uses that term. The tribulations a devotee undergoes is another transcendental bhav with the Lord. Actually, it's a loving exchange. And why is he doing that? To help us develop love for him, to come back to him. So if we, Shradhar Swami, not the previous Acharya, but our Juhu Beach Shradhar Swami, he often would quote Lord Buddha. Now this sounds interesting for an ISKCON sannyasi that he's quoting Lord Buddha. And he would say that distress is compulsory, suffering is optional. So this is kind of the point that you're making. We can choose our response to the distress. And if we understand the philosophy that's presented in 10.14.8, tate nukam shukshamikshamano, but also that particular aspect, this is actually Krishna's love for me, that he's doing this. He's helping me, get purified so that I can more effectively serve him, so that I can go back to him, so that my relationship with him will deepen. And there's no question of blaming God. It's a question of thank you. So it's like, Queen Kunti, vipada shantata shashvat, tucha tucha jagad guru. Let those calamities happen again and again. Because when they happen, we see you, and when we see you, we don't see repeated birth and death. So it's actually a thankful attitude that we can have when these heavy things come our way. Like, thank you, Krishna. Then you go on with full enthusiasm to just, and it's a fact, when you look back at it, these trials and tribulations are tremendous learning experiences.
Yes.
When we're in the middle of it, we may not be able to see it that way, but after the fact, we can see this Krishna purified me of this anartha and this shortcoming, allowed me to take deeper shelter in him, like that.
Thank you. Thank you for especially bringing up that point that there's a transcendental bhav with the Lord. Thank you. Yes, Mataji. Okay.
Thank you. It is very interesting that in that verse, that Kampanu, it says that it's not the punishment, but it's to remove the propensity. So can you please kindly read that section again?
Sure. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord. And therefore, the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity.
So it's to curtail the mentality
that produced the activity.
Thank you. I wanted to also share this thing or ask you the question or bring up this point where Draupadi says we should not punish him, but just before that in the previous verse is mentioned, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, it's quite interesting where he says, because of her womanly nature.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Well, I gave a whole class on that. Vama Swabhava. I mean, I had to give a class during that time, and the verse happened to be on that Vama Swabhava, exactly Vama Swabhava that verse. So there, the difference between her and the Pandavas was, what happened was when she saw him being tied like a rope, tied with ropes like an animal, she could not bear it, plus she spontaneously offered obeisances. Because Prabhupada says that's the nature I mean, women by nature, they offer that respect. So that is what is being referred to as Vama Svabhava. That she could not bear to see him tied with ropes like an animal. Prabhupada says that's the deserved treatment. Plus, she also offered obeisances on seeing him, actually. So, this is what, due to her soft-hearted nature. Whereas the others only were debating about whether he should be spared or not. They did not, I mean, get into this consideration of, oh, I mean, he's bound like an animal, let us offer obeisance also, he's son of our guru. Those kind of things did not happen. That's what is referred to as Vama Svabhava, not the fact that she wanted to free him. In fact, that is considered as legitimate. You can see later on in the purports, Prabhupada mentions this very clearly, that she had legitimate arguments for sparing him. Both sides had legitimate arguments. So, then finally, Krishna, it says, in fact, Krishna was testing Arjuna in his understanding of religious principles. And he came out victorious, because first he said kill, later after hearing this thing, then he said, now you decide. Then he smiles. When he smiles, immediately Arjuna understands what is to be done. It does not say Krishna told him what to do. He just smiles, that's it. So Krishna was all the while testing him. Not that Krishna intended to kill him, later he changed his mind after hearing. That's also an argument which you hear from some scholars in ISKCON. That first Krishna had thought like this, after hearing from Draupadi he changed. That's not true, because in the Bhagavatam text itself and in the purports, it's very clear that Krishna was testing Arjuna, because Krishna can never have some confusion about what is to be done. It's not that he thought this should be done now, later he changed his mind. It doesn't work like that, because Krishna is God, he knows exactly what is to be done. So sometimes he may test just to bring out the understanding of devotees, and plus the rasa, devotees' understanding of religious principles. So that Vama Svabhava is not referring to the fact that she wanted to free him.
So are you saying that maybe, I just was curious about what the acharyas are saying in this regard. Are you familiar? You can get back to me.
No, I've not read. I just read Prabhupada himself. I mean, I didn't, usually what happens is when something is not very clear from Prabhupada's purport, then I see, Prabhupada sometimes presents it in a condensed form. For example, 11th verse of the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Some of those things are completely, it goes beyond one's mind. What exactly is Prabhupada trying to say in that 11th verse of the 2nd chapter? You know, but then if you read Ramanujacharya's commentary, then you can see Prabhupada has derived things directly from there. When you read that, then immediately what Prabhupada has said becomes very clear. So that's what I normally do. If it is not, I'm not able to understand what it is, then I try to see where is Prabhupada getting this from. So then it becomes clear. But in the case of Draupadi's, this particular Ashwatthama, Prabhupada's purports themselves are very clear. There is no difficulty to understand. So he explains this very clearly, that for an ordinary person, it is okay to offer obeisances, but someone with intelligence should discriminate more carefully and things like that. Yes, Puji.
You said that if something is going to cause us harm, we should stop that. Like devotees should.
Right.
So, for in Draupadi's case, Draupadi should have told Ashwatthama to be killed, no? Because anyways, again Ashwatthama came and harmed their family, Uttara, like he left Brahmastra. So how do we understand that?
No. The point is that she knew that it's not that, what do you call it? She has got very competent husbands. They are the kings of the world. So it's not that, everybody knows about this also, right? So it's not that she has to specially make some plea. I was trying to say that suppose somebody does some harm to you. Others may think this person is a very good devotee. But if he has really caused you some harm, it's important to report to the authority, identify the perpetrator and report. Because otherwise he may cause the same harm to other people. So the idea is to bring it to the awareness of people who can administer justice. For the sake of the welfare of all. Not that you want to get the pleasure of seeing him punished. You understood, right? That's not the point. That's all that I was trying to say. Yeah. No. So there in that particular case, everybody knows, no, what is there to report? It's just, Pandavas are right there. Yes.
Hare Krishna, would you like, if you see this 18.16 was like, Krishna is saying, therefore one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent. And Prabhupada is saying a foolish person cannot understand that the super soul is sitting in. So like how we understand?
No, doer, there's a difference between doer and the cause. The cause is not necessarily, there is a certain cause. We are the cause. And doer means you cannot do any action by your own. Just like if you cannot move a ton of steel, but the same ton of steel, if it is in the form of a car, you can move it, right? So you need certain help. It has to be designed in a certain way and all those things. Then you can move it. So like that, there is a difference between cause. The cause of the sinful activities is, the cause of the suffering is us. But not necessarily that, it may be the doer, may be somebody else. No, somebody is administering it to us anyway. So it's, yeah, the cause is what is being
But like Prabhupada is saying in puppet, Krishna,
Five factors.
super soul is sitting on a heart and he is responsible for all these actions.
Super soul is?
Super soul is sitting on our heart.
No, he doesn't say super soul is responsible for the actions. No.
Yeah, like Prabhupada is saying, a foolish person cannot understand that the super soul is sitting as a friend, within and conducting the actions.
Yeah. In this conducting the actions in this context should be understood to mean that without his sanction, not a blade of grass can move. That is what it means. Even the power to hit somebody, to love somebody, whatever, do whatever you want, has to come from love is different. But anyway, other things like abilities, those kind of things, Krishna has to give you. Otherwise, you cannot do it. You cannot even move your hand to give a gift to someone if Krishna does not cooperate. I mean, you have to work with the sanction of the Lord. In that sense, it is said. But he is not the person responsible for it. Because the nature of things is because of you want it, things are coordinated like this and you are able to do it. But you are the cause.
Because for every action, 5 factors are there, like as Krishna previous was said.
Yeah.
So like how can we take it like, or we are the only responsible for, because
that is the nature of life in this material world. Just because we need, just like you drive a car, the person who built the car is not going to be responsible for the accident, no? You're driving the car and crashing it. The company is not going to be responsible for it. You drove it. So you can say why they provided me with a car. Otherwise I would not have driven the car. Because you had a desire, you had money, you went and bought the car. So like that. So the cause is ultimately us, because we are only, in that sense we are the doers, but we cannot do independently. We need certain help. Finally we are the cause of it.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
One second. Padmavat Prabhu, should I close now? Okay. So we can discuss outside outside the.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.